Welcome back to AP US History. This is part 3 of Chapter 8, looking at the new government that was founded after the Revolutionary War. We've looked at some of the problems that they experienced. We've looked at the Articles of Confederation. Now we'll focus in on the Constitution created, the new Constitution created in 1787. Now we talked about Madison being the father of the Constitution. He's going to bring some ideas to the table. These are pictures of some of the people who were opposed to this new Constitution. They will become known as anti-federalist. Some of the folks that were supportive of the new Constitution will be called federalist. They wanted a stronger central government. Madison brings 3 ideas to the convention that he will incorporate into this new document. One, he wants the national government to be stronger than the states, and that will be written into the Constitution, that somehow the laws passed by the federal government will supersede state laws. He also wanted separation of power. He believed that each branch of government, the executive, the judicial, and legislative branch, should operate independent from each other, so that not all power was concentrated in the hands of one body. He also believed in a republican form of government to control the factions and the negative impact of certain groups within this new republic. And Shays' Rebellion was one of those that pointed to the fact that the federal government couldn't control rebellions. Now, the Articles of Confederation are scrapped. In effect, the U.S. government was overthrown. States were in danger of losing their sovereignty, and people like Jefferson called this treason. Some believe that went against the wishes for why the convention was set up. They were there to fix the Article of Confederation rather than scrap it. One of the big issues that seemed to be a snag in the beginning of this convention was how were people going to be represented in this new government. And this became a very divisive issue, threatening to dissolve this new convention. The 2 major plans that were debated, the large state plan was the Virginia plan, which said that both houses of this bicameral Congress should be based on population, proportional representation. The large states would have the advantage. Small states preferred the New Jersey plan, which was a kind of a retread of the Articles of Confederation, which said each state would be represented equally in a unicameral or one-body Congress. Favored the small states. Small states feared that they would be dominated by the large states because they would have the larger population. This shows a breakdown of the population at that time, and you can see that there were some states that certainly had a numerical advantage over other states. If you look at Virginia and you look at New York and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, they certainly had more of an advantage over some of the smaller states. The Virginia plan, again, based on representation. William Patterson is the one who came up with the idea of the New Jersey plan, a unicameral or one body to represent each state. The impasse threatened to break up the convention. Eventually, cooler heads will prevail. They come up with what they call the Great Compromise or the Connecticut Plan. Smaller states conceded representation in the House of Representation or Representatives. That would be based on population. The upper house or the Senate would give an equal vote for each state. Each state would receive 2 senators. Every tax bill would have to originate in the House, since bigger states would pay the larger portion of the taxes. And here shows a picture cartoon of the Connecticut Compromise. And so they did reach a compromise of this, and they proceeded on. There will be several compromises as this commission wears on. Of course, the largest states would benefit from this compromise. They also decided that there would be an independent executive branch, and the president would be the commander of all the military forces. He would have the power to veto legislation, wide powers to appoint domestic offices, including judgeships. The president would be elected for 4 years, and it would be done on the Electoral College, not by popular vote. Mainly because the delegates believed that the ordinary citizen may not be capable of choosing the right candidate. So the Electoral College would be the way that these men would decide who would be the president. So no direct election of by the people for the president or even by the Senate, but the House of Representatives would be a direct vote. The Electoral College, as it stands today, each state receiving so many electoral votes, and when you get 270, you have a majority of the electoral votes and you are declared the winner. Judicial branch was created. A Supreme Court was placed, and it would review all matters pertaining to federal law. No provisions for lower courts. The president would appoint the judges, and the Senate would confirm them. North and South issues continued to dominate the convention. Slavery was a big issue. The North being against or not favoring slavery, and the South being an important part of their economy. They come up with what they call the Three-Fifths Compromise over the issue of slavery, which says that a slave will count for 3/5 of a person. So for every 5 slaves you have, 3 would count for population and also for taxation. Of course, the North argued that slaves could not count since they were not citizens. But they will work out this agreement, and the North will get the taxation part of it, and the South will get some representation. So there is a compromise on that. Slave trade also will end in 1808. It didn't mean that slavery would end in the United States. It just meant that slaves would no longer be imported 20 years after the ratification of this document. They also made a compromise on taxes, import taxes. They said that the federal government could place a tax on things coming in, but no tax on exports. And this was an agreement to accommodate the South, who depended on the sale of their agricultural goods overseas. There was something called checks and balances and separation of power. This came from Baron de Montesquieu. It said that the branches of government should be separated and have different functions and powers. Executive branch was to enforce the law, legislative branch to make it, judicial branch to interpret the laws, and each branch would be independent of the other two, and they would be watchdogs of the other two. Checks and balances. You can see here kind of the diagram of how they went about making sure that no one got too much power. And here's the 3 branches. The Elastic Clause was written in Article 1, Section 8. It said that Congress will have the power to make all laws that are necessary and proper. So this gave the Congress a flexibility to meet any new challenges in the future. Congress will regulate the right to all commercial trade, both foreign and domestic. The Supremacy Clause is written into the Constitution. That is in Article 6, which says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It supersedes state laws. John Jay and Alexander Hamilton will argue for the Elastic Clause. These 2 men are Federalist. They believe in a strong central government. Which power shall reign supreme? Of course, the national over the state. And this was just the opposite from the Articles of Confederation. You might think of it as a 2-layer cake. That is the federal government on top and the state government underneath. Marble cake federalism is when there's a mixture of powers between the states and the federal government. Certainly, federalism, two branches, two layers, federal and the state. So federal power supersedes state power. Conservative safeguards, the conventions were unanimous in their belief that male suffrage was dangerous to democracy, so fear of mob rule. As far as voting requirements were concerned, that was left up to the states to decide who would vote and who wouldn't. Most of the states, or all the states, believe that only white males who had property should be eligible to do any voting. But this is not spelled out in the federal constitution, but is spelled out in the state constitutions. Federal judges would be appointed for life by the president. The president would be elected by the electoral college, not a direct vote of the people. The founding fathers were afraid of universal male suffrage. They believed that their position in society might be threatened if everyone had a right to vote. Of course, women and Indians and African Americans did not have a voice in the new government. Senators would be elected by state legislatures and not the people. Only the House of Representatives would be voted in directly by the people in their state. There were no Bill of Rights to protect people from the federal government, and this is something they will compromise on later. The Federalists will promise that they will draft, that will be the first order of business, to put together a Bill of Rights to protect people from the federal government, not necessarily from the state government. Ratification would require that 9 states agree to this new constitution. If ratified, the Constitution would be the supreme law of the land. Congress submitted the constitutions of states without recommendations, and it was up to states to decide what they were going to do. A lot of people were shocked that the first constitution was scrapped. Many feared that the new federal government might become a monster and take away their rights. So the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists will debate this in the different state legislatures, but in the end, all will accept and ratify the new Constitution. The Federalist Papers were papers written in support of the Constitution and printed in the local newspapers. Federalist Papers written by men like Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison. And so the Federalists will support the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists will say that no, this is not the way to go. But but the Federalists will promise them a Bill of Rights, and so they eventually will adopt this new Constitution. The Constitution officially adopted in 1788, and you can see some of the strongholds for the Federalist and Anti-Federalist. And this is the ratification of the Constitution. Not everybody was invited to the party, particularly the poor, the working class, and the educated. The rich and powerful delegates to the convention, white property owners, and they were all male. And we'll stop right there.